RVAgreen. So just before the meeting started, David did send out an email with a link to the slide deck if you wanted to open it on your own. The first slide has the links that we are using today. The second one is a Q&A slide. If you have any questions that come up later or during the meeting that you want to ask us, feel free to type on that slide yourself. And welcome. So glad to see such a great turnout today. You're such a an all-star team, and I'm just really grateful for your willingness to be here and share. So today we're going to be, this is our kind of wrap-up meeting on engagement results and next steps as we move toward plan adoption and implementation. So the agenda, we're going to kind of settle in, go around, and any partner updates. Anything you want to elaborate on that might be a recent win for equitable climate action and resilience. We haven't met in a couple months, so this is just an opportunity to share what you've been working on that relates to this process. And we'll be putting that together. All 5 working groups are meeting this week, and so we'll be compiling all of those wins and sending them out so you can all hear what everyone's doing. And then we'll go over, David has been hard at work on engagement the past couple months. I know this working group's been quiet, but out in the community, there's been a lot going on, so we want to share that. And then talk about the next steps, outlining this timeline, a discussion for staying involved, and then we'll wrap up. These meetings have been usually about an hour, so we'll hand you back midday to the rest of what you have going on. So the objectives I kind of went over, reviewing engagement period, the roadmap, timeline, and ways for you to stay involved and kind of get your feedback on some of those things. So before we launch into all of that, we do want to hear a little more about what you've been doing. And maybe Rob, I'll start with you just because I got to go to Richmond a couple weeks ago and present on the plan, but also tour that eco corridor, and it was really beautiful. So maybe you want to speak to what's been going on at University of Richmond?
Sure. Yeah, so the eco corridor is an 18-acre restored area that is a stream restoration that's in partnership with the city of Richmond, as well as a half-mile hiking and biking trail and an area of, we planted about 25,000 plants and shrubs, flowers. There's 2 pollinator meadows. It's a really beautiful restored area that is home to lots of critters that don't have as much open space as they need. So it's really lovely. And then yesterday just went to the ribbon cutting of Spider Solar and the Spotsylvania Solar Project. So about an hour north of here in Spotsylvania County, we have a 120-acre solar array that is going to zero, or as of last year, is zeroing out our Scope 2 or electricity emissions. So that was a really big deal. And seeing the scale in person it's a large facility. So that was really exciting.
That's fantastic. Andrew, maybe I'll ask you to speak to, speaking of solar, the Bridging the Gap program. I was so glad I could be there.
Yeah, so Bridging the Gap is a local nonprofit, been active for a while, primarily, and they're based right in here in Richmond. Their main focus is getting formerly incarcerated folks working again and helping them overcome all their barriers to find employment. And the director, Richard Walker, he has family land out at Union Hill and got very involved in climate issues a few years ago with the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. And he's caught the solar bug. So he is now in partnership with the city, the Office of Community Wealth Building, is putting on these trainings once every month or two to provide industry level certification, free training for a week for whomever's interested. Bill came to a recent one. If you want to know the nuts and bolts of putting together your own solar array, it's kind of your chance. it's a great program. The students are prepared for the NABCEP associate level training. NABCEP is the North American Board of Certified Energy Professionals. So the 30-year legacy solar certification for those sorts of installers. And I've helped, given my background, have helped Richard make connections in the solar industry and come in on the last day because I'm technology neutral about clean energy, and folks need to be made aware of energy efficiency. I do a 1-hour crash course on home energy efficiency and jobs and activity in home energy audits here in the Richmond area. And on that topic, my familiar refrain, I'm happy to say that on this call right now, 4 folks have had energy audits from Viridian in the last year and a half. So what's everyone else waiting for? Give us a call.
Awesome. Thank you, Anne.
Real quick, Andrew is not a proponent of big capital intensive fixes. Andrew is a #1 proponent of go to Lowe's, get yourself a caulk gun, and go to town before you start spending a lot of money. So I appreciate that.
Nice. Thank you so much. All right. What other wins? Anyone else has something to share? All right. Well, then I will launch back into our slideshow. If you think of anything else you want to add to these sticky notes, go for it. But let's go on and talk about Spring 22 community engagement, and I will hand it over to David Sale.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn. So we just wanted to give you all sort of an overview of where things stand, what the engagement process looked like moving into this next phase of what the plan becomes. And so over the past 2 months, starting in April, we've been working to make sure that folks see the plan, talk about climate change, take our surveys and stuff like that. And so to date, we have almost 400 online surveys completed. And about 50 to 75 paper surveys still coming in from our various partners, our roundtable members, people like that. And so we'll be adding more data to that with those paper surveys in the coming days and weeks. The plan itself on Conveo got over 2,600 views, which is a lot more engagement than our past Conveo documents have gotten. So that's really encouraging. And we had over 300 individual comments and questions within those views. And so it was good to see a range of different interaction with the plan, questions throughout to really show that people were reading it. And so we were really encouraged by that level of interaction. Over the past 2 months, we also made a more conscious effort to be at community events, civic association meetings, city council, district meetings, things like that. And so we were able to be at 20 events across the past 2 months, ranging from smaller informal office hours to larger community events and volunteer events. And so that was a big win to get sort of our faces out in the community, talking about this stuff. And then really excitingly, we were able to have information in all Richmond Public Library branches, as well as 30 high ridership stops across the city, just to continue to try to get this information out in new ways and in new areas to new audiences. And so it's been a, I think, really successful engagement period, and some of the early metrics that we've been looking at show that we are seeing an overall increase in interaction with sort of our office and its work and the plan itself. So all really positive so far. Dawn, if you want to jump to the next slide. This is just based on the online surveys, and so just showing sort of where responses are coming from in terms of council districts. We can see that sort of like last year at this time, the 6th and 9th districts are still relatively underrepresented in terms of their response to the survey, but I'm hoping and expecting a lot of the paper surveys to help increase representation from those areas. And so once those data are incorporated, I expect this distribution to look a little different, but just off the bat, this is where we're at. And then if you want to jump to the next one, Dawn. One of the, I think, most important questions in sort of our work linking climate solutions to community priorities is just having a continual touch point on how the community views these priorities and how we can make sure that our work aligns closely with what they're advancing as their own goals and stuff. And so unsurprisingly, racial equity and environmental justice is still the top ranked sort of community priority that we've been looking at. And so that just speaks to the importance of continuing to really emphasize this interaction between environmental justice and environmental solutions. And then things like affordable housing and safe and beautiful neighborhoods also rose to the top of the list. And so just using data like this to inform how and where we implement our strategies is going to be important moving forward. If we jump to the next one, Dawn. Just in terms of full transparency, sort of what we're doing in terms of next steps with all the comments and questions that we got on the plan itself, was between Dawn and I, we went through every single comment and question and addressed it or made note to edit the plan accordingly or to forward the information and good suggestions to the implementation teams. And so we've gone through and looked at every single one of those and sort of grouped the feedback according to what its next steps are. The plan is currently in its sort of next iteration based on that feedback and at city leadership's office to review before it goes to the mayor and state council later, which we'll talk about. But one of the things that did come up were sort of these tougher questions that a lot of folks have top of mind and that we wanted to sort of share with you as we think about how we can answer them as an office, as a community, as a group of concerned advocates for the climate, and sort of think about how that fits into our overall goals. And so things like, 2030 is too late. Why can't we move faster? How are these strategies being paid for? How can we address Richmond Gas Works in a way that makes sense for these goals? And so as you look through that list and as you sort of think about the work ahead, these are the sort of questions that I think are going to be harder to answer, but really central to the longer term success of a lot of what we're doing. So Dawn, can you jump to the next one? So before I hand it back to Dawn, does anyone have any questions about the engagement period, what we did, what we're seeing, anything like that? Awesome. All yours, Dawn.
All right, thanks so much, David. So this is where we are following, as David described. We took all of that feedback and we are finalizing the plan content. It is in front of senior leadership review right now, and then it'll go on to the mayor and city council for adoption. So, finalizing the plan content, building advocacy network, and then seeking approval and adoption. That's really where we are. So those tougher questions, I'm just going to go back for a second because it doesn't mean that we need to go back to the drawing table. We just wanted to share this with you because we have a lot of passionate, well-informed people who want answers. And as you know, this has been a 2-year process. We have worked very hard to get it to where it is, with lots of prioritization and just a very reiterative process. So we don't need to go back to the drawing board, but we do need to consider that these things, we do need to figure out how to incorporate these questions into the solutions going forward. So it's just, there's a lot to think about. And what I think are in general, what we've been answering these questions as best as we can right now, and letting folks know that, these are great questions. Some of these, beyond these, great ideas, we will pass these on to the implementation teams to be considered in the next steps. You guys came up with a lot of equitable next steps, but there are others that are coming up from the community. So all of that is being captured, and that's where we are. So on to the adoption, this shared accountability framework, just wanted to kind of revisit that. Again, this is where we are trying to make sure that folks know that it's not a linear process. This is really just a circular process where ongoing transparency. This is what we're doing with all the comments. We don't have answers to every single question, but we want to get there as a community. And our office is the kind of public touching point for the city on all of this, but it doesn't mean that our office has all the answers. So we want to get the right folks together and champion all of this work, but it is a shared responsibility. So culture of improvement is what we're going for, building those trusting relationships by being honest and engaging. All of this, centering equity and the community engagement that work that David has been doing is, we've been building some great relationships. And then institutionalizing sustainability. I'm sure most of you have heard that our office is, as of Friday, we will officially be we will be our own department, part of the community and economic development portfolio, working alongside the folks who are, doing the planning and zoning and economic development, and just kind of, I feel like we'll be part of the conversation at the beginning rather than the end, as we've seen in the past. So regular evaluation on all of this is part of it, but just to remind you that this is kind of the cycle going forward. It's not a line, it's a circle. So I'm going to hand this back to David to talk about the advocacy piece.
Yeah, so the sort of immediate next steps are getting the plan from where it's at now in front of City Council and having them adopt it so it can be formally recognized as part of the Richmond 300 master plan and sort of begin the formal implementation of a lot of these strategies. And so procedurally, what happens next is by April 17th, the final plan has to be submitted to O&R for introduction into the City Council meeting the following month. September 20th, it has to pass through the Land Use, Housing, and Transportation Standing Committee because we are seeking it as an amendment to the master plan. So that committee will see it first before it goes to City Council on September 26th, hopefully. And so this is our sort of ideal timeline. All the sort of final steps to the plan development are in place to hit this. And so as we look toward those September meetings, really looking to build up a network of advocates who can or would be willing to speak either in person or via letter or writing to their City Council representative, to the representatives of that standing committee to voice their support for climate action and resilience, to speak about their experiences as a working table or a round table or working group member, or just talk about the importance of sustainability in city and community planning in general. And so that's where we'll really be looking forward to, putting the final pieces of this process in place. And we'll probably be sending out in September that sort of last call to action around mobilizing that support for those meetings.
Awesome, thanks, David. So there's the advocacy piece to get this adopted, and in the meantime, the work is happening. We are, setting these strategies up. We need implementation team members. So if that is something you're willing to work on, again, this is kind of the last big working group meeting, but we'll be looking for implementation teams moving forward. So would love for your help on that. This will kind of just to remind you that diagram on the right, our office is generally the champion for all of the strategies, but in many or most cases, there's a city steward, another department that's actually the vessel for getting this work done. And so those have all been identified, and in most cases, the staff person has already been identified. So the implementation team will be headed up by that city steward, and then the implementation partners will be other departments, private sector representatives, community organizations, and the equity partners. In one of our exercises last summer, we walked through just kind of getting some brainstorm ideas of who are your recommendations for these implementation partners. So we do have some ideas of who you guys thought should be involved, but of course, you're the experts at this point. You helped develop the strategies, so we would love for your ongoing involvement if you are willing and able. So that's what the teams look like, and I'll just go a little further into that on what's being passed off to these implementation teams. So all of that work, has been that we've gathered over the past 2 years through all of the working group meetings, all of the community engagement. It has been captured in a massive workbook. So for every strategy, we have, all of the, like I said, those partner recommendations, all of the funding and financing suggestions, all of the equitable next steps, greenhouse gas reductions potentials and climate equity. How do we center equity? All of the great input that you guys have generated has been captured into strategy details. So the champion, our office will be sitting down with the steward to kind of walk through this toolkit, and then they will be putting together the implementation teams. And there's a project planning worksheet and an implementation action plan that outlines how to use the equity screening, or how the equity screening tool and the climate equity index will be used in the project planning. And then the outcomes and indicators are in there so that folks know what the reporting expectation is, so that we can continue to track and monitor the progress of our overarching goals. So just wanted to touch briefly on that, let you know that everything that you guys have generated is being passed on. And I just wanted to take a minute here to ask you, you guys are the experts at this point, having done this for almost 2 years. So, at the beginning, we came up with this working group ground rules and group expectations to be respectful, be present. We really wanted everyone to participate with no one dominating, be additive, not repetitive, aim for consensus, be open to new ideas. If you bring a problem, bring a solution, separate the people from the problem, speak for yourself from your own lived experience, make space. So if you had to use whatever lessons learned, maybe it's some of those that you found were really helpful during this process, what would your advice be for these implementation teams going forward to see these, to make this work successful? Any suggestions?
Don, this is Joe. In my mind, with this type of work team and in other teams I've worked on, collaboration is always the key, and collaborative problem solving is more key still.
Yep, absolutely. I think we had something like that in the environment group on Monday, David, wasn't it? Don't necessarily think that you have the answers when you're coming to the table. Something like that. When you're collaborating, you're solving it together, and you're not necessarily walking in the room with the answers already.
Yeah, my experience professionally has been, sometimes you can't tackle all problems by committee, but I have found that it's really critical to get input from different people who bring different perspectives, because sometimes you wind up having to solve things that you didn't even think of without that input.
Absolutely.
Hey, this is Giovanni. I was going to kind of say that same last part too, just to not be afraid to be creative. Throw it, it's almost back to when we were in grade school and the teacher would say there's no dumb question, or there's, just the one that's not asked. Throw the dumb ideas that you think are dumb out there too, because it may not solve this problem, but somebody that's listening may, be able to use those same ideas to solve something, on another project that they're working on, or putting more than one of those ideas that may not make as much sense in the beginning, but once you pair them up with other people's ideas and you put 2 or 3 positions together, it'll boil out to be something grand.
Awesome. Thanks, Giovanni. Excellent. Any others?
Maybe I misunderstood the question. I mean, thus far the advice has been sort of maybe soft skills, and I mean, to me that those are rules for life for sure. I think in this case, if you're talking about a steward in a city department trying to take on something new, or or modify some existing practices. Job one is clear direction and buy-in from the top. Those stewards have to not have any doubt that they're supposed to make it happen. That leadership will support them. Leadership will understand there'll be fits and starts and missteps along the way, but those stewards have to be empowered or nothing's going to happen.
Well said, Andrew. I like that.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, Jeff?
One that I'd put in that kind of bridges, because everybody knows I'm the bummer who talks about, okay, well, where are you going to get the funds, where are you going to get the budget, etc. But something that I think kind of bridges number 3 and number 4 is think for the community, think from the dais. So what you're really doing is you're thinking about what community needs are, and some of those might be incredibly creative and very complex, but you need to be able to shrink those down into the elevator pitch of what ROI is. You know what I mean? So it's really about processing all these great ideas into a communication tool that gets accomplished via funding.
Love it. Excellent. Thank you. Really good suggestions. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you. This has been really helpful. All right. So let me tell you a little more about what's next in terms of implementation, because this has been, this question is coming up a lot right now. You know, just to kind of go back and remind you that prioritization matrix is where we started when we had 188 strategies, and all of those weights and you know, criterias in the roundtable help to prioritize the elements of the matrix. So we took that and we combined it with the plan timeline. If you'll remember, each action has been assigned a near or a far designation. So that, of course, moves things up if it's in the near designation. The status of it, if it's ongoing, then we want to, you know, take advantage of that, and maybe there's a piece of a strategy that's ongoing and we need to add to it. So we went ahead and elevated that up to the top of the list. If there's departmental alignment, if another department has prioritized something and we can align with it, then it gets priority. Obviously, if there's ARPA funding being put towards a certain strategy, then it's moved up. And like I said, projects that are already underway that we know of. So when you kind of add all of those elements together, what we've landed on are these suggested FY23 priorities. So for the buildings and energy pathway, what we're hearing and seeing as the main priority is reducing Richmond's energy burden. So there's the lead by example strategies under municipal energy efficiency programs. And then there's the residential energy efficiency retrofits that rose to the top of the list. CPACE is happening. So we're working on that. And then solar access and education. Those are the things that we heard from the community, and also that had a lot of extra impetus from the list on the left. For the community pathway, you know, increasing Richmond's resilience to climate change this coming year, the action items at the top of the list are the community benefit scorecard, compensating community members, building capacity among community leaders, and then the resilience hubs. For the environment pathway, we have expand green space and enhance natural resources through the Parks Master Plan, Urban Heat Island Reduction Plan, Urban Forest Master Plan, and neighborhood prioritization. For transportation, we have an opportunity to integrate a lot of the strategies into Richmond Connects. So that will have an EV action plan in it and focus on integrated connectivity and complete streets. And then for the waste pathway, the priorities this coming year are foster waste reduction through composting. So lots of consumer education going on and community engagement, and most of it's focused around the pilot composting plan that is growing. We have a lot of energy behind that. So any questions on this slide and kind of where we are in terms of the top priorities right now? So again, you know, the number one goal is get this plan adopted. Then we have the council backing to really make headway on this work. Right now, it's just kind of like, you know, the cart before the horse. This stuff is happening, and we're trying to keep up with it and incorporate it into our work. But once we get the plan adopted, we can really make some headway. So I'm going to hand it back to David for the wrap up.
Yeah, thanks. So like Tom mentioned at the start of this meeting, this is our last formal working group meeting. So we want to say thank you times a million for all the hard work, brain power, time that you put into this process. We know it's been a really long journey, but I think we have a really great product to show for it, and really couldn't have done that without all of your expertise and time. So thank you so much for that. In terms of next steps, like we mentioned, we'll be continuing to reach out to you. So this is not goodbye, but we'll be looking for advocates ahead of council adoption, as well as members and participants on our implementation teams as these strategies get up and running. So if you want to be part of that next process, you can email Dawn, and she'll connect you when the time is right to the strategy that you're most interested in. And so, you know, we hope that this is not the end of our relationship with everyone, and we can move forward together. And just as a final thing, if anyone has any final updates, upcoming events that they want to promote, resources they want to share, anything like that, the floor can be yours. But otherwise, just thank you one final time.
Thanks so much, David. So yeah, this is it. Again, thank you for your time and all of the thought that you've put into this plan. We're getting, you know, just nothing but excellent feedback, really. Most of those tough questions are just like, okay, let's do it, and let's do even more. And how are we going to do this and when? So lots of energy behind this work, and I cannot thank you enough. So any updates, anything else anyone wants to share with the group, or questions you want to ask us? This is your chance. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I maybe should have shared this earlier, but number of elected officials and folks from the city administration recently went on a little field trip down to Charlotte and checked out their innovation barn that's home to their circular economy. And I will forward those resources over to Dawn. But let me just put it this way. We're going to have one. It is very neat.
Yay, that's great to know. Thank you, Jeff. What about you, Damien? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize if you've already explained this, but what's the kind of general timeline between the end of the work for this committee and the start of, I guess, the new implementation teams?
Well, the list that I showed you, the FY23 priorities, are kind of where we're trying to tee things up first. And so if there's anything on this list that you want to be involved in, please let us know so we can be sure to get you on those background materials we're putting together. For everything else in the plan, you know, we have we've got to get our office up and running. We've got to get the plan adopted. And then we'll be moving into budget season in the fall. So just kind of teeing things up right now. I don't think that the kickoff meetings are going to happen until the plan's adopted.
Right. So, okay. But then I guess I'm still asking, like, what is there a kind of designate input? Like, is there a point in this process where the work of these, you know, subcommittees comes to a conclusion and then we move on to other phases of the work of the project? I'm just curious from a personal level, because as I mentioned, you know, I've got this institute starting, and just trying to get a sense of like my continued time commitment for this project as I juggle other things.
Okay, so this is it. This is our last working group meeting today.
Got it.
You'll probably get emails from us if there is some kind of like general report out, maybe we would do an all hands meeting at some point, but this is really it for the working group. So we're disbanding after today, and then it'll be small groups if you're interested in staying involved.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I will follow up with your office directly at some point once this institute gets a little bit more shape to it, because one of the my role is going to be the associate director of policy and community engagement. So one of the things that I intend to do is continue the work that I've been doing with you guys over the years, but try to, you know, sort of channel that via this institute and leverage resources of other faculty and experts at the university in the process. So yeah, I'm happy to, you know, close this chapter of this working group, but looking forward to our next engagement, you know, when that comes.
You know, I appreciate that. If you get time or can think of it and you want to shoot me an email with the language of what you will be doing and how you could think that you guys might be able to help what I'm doing, I have a tracking tool with every single action and a column where I'm trying to identify either what tools we need or what resources we know of to move each of those action items forward. So if you have any thoughts on how you might want to be involved, even if you don't know specifically and you want to shoot me an email just saying, well, I have this skill and I want to be involved in that kind of stuff, I can at least, you know, capture that at this point.
Yeah, certainly. I will, yeah, again, it's going to take a couple months to kind of figure out what exactly we're doing here with this institute and how much resources we have available. But when that starts to clear up a little bit, I'll reach back out.
Awesome. Thank you, Damien.
Great. Thanks.
How about you, Bill? Did you have something? You're muted. Hold on. Let me unmute you. Nope, I can't.
Here we go. You there?
There you go.
Hi. Well, much on the same venue is I was wondering if you could leave me on the list of an email list. Didn't we have somebody who was sending us information of any city council meetings that was pertinent, you know, that there was going to be a vote, or, you know, they were looking for a public participation on an issue, a sustainability issue that would come before the city council, and an email list, and I was part of that. I haven't seen one in quite a while, but I'd like to consider myself, hey, shoot me any of the information on these emails, you know, maybe I'll have a chance to run downtown, you know, last minute or whatnot and participate, whatever, you know, your office designates as a you know, as need, public need, you know, participation type issue, you know, for that kind of stuff. I would certainly consider myself, you know, hey, shoot me an email. If I can't come, I can't come, you know, that kind of thing. That's all I wanted to relay.
Yeah, I think in our newsletter list, we were doing, when there was something like that, we had maybe a separate notice that went out to our email list, but that's a great reminder that we'll be doing this with the upcoming meetings. David, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think the newsletter is probably the best way. And then as we think about the exact needs for this next period, a few months ahead of the city council vote, I think we can be a little bit more specific in what those asks are. So we can make sure to flag that both in the newsletter, as well as probably emails to the working group members.
Yeah, action alerts. Great, thank you. Perfect. Any other thoughts or questions or updates? All right, well then I will release you, and I just want to thank you again. I'll be on here for a little while longer if anyone wants to stay on and ask me any questions, but otherwise, thank you again and happy summer.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, team.